my name is Miss Emily, and I'm a children's librarian at the Asheboro Public Library. As a librarian, I obviously think that reading is super fun, and I love to do it. But it's not just reading for the sake of reading that I love to do, although I do like to just sit down and enjoy a book most of the time. I also think it's really fun to look at why we enjoy books, or why books make us feel a certain way. That's because the authors are using certain creative writing skills to help get across the feelings that they want us to feel or that they were feeling while they were writing it. And maybe they want you to interpret something a certain way, or maybe they don't want you to interpret it that way, but we don't know that because they didn't tell us. The great thing about reading is that everyone can interpret things differently. And the great thing about creative writing is you can write things with a certain intent, but people might interpret it differently. It's super cool to see how other people interpret your writing. So welcome to my Creative Writing Corner. It's not quite a corner, but it's good enough. In Creative Writing Corner, we're going to talk about the different techniques that authors use and how we can use those in our own writing. So today, I wanted to talk about poetry. Now, you might be thinking, poetry's so boring and poetry's so serious. But let me tell you, poetry can be funny. That's right, I said it. Now, there's nothing wrong with serious poems. I like a lot of serious poems, and a lot of people like serious poems too. But sometimes I really just want to read something that's funny and it's going to make me laugh. And the great thing about funny poems is that they're so quick, they're almost like a little joke. So you get right to the punchline really fast. So today I wanted us to take a look at Shel Silverstein. Shel Silverstein has written a lot of poetry collections. One that he's most famous for is Where the Sidewalk Ends, and we're going to be taking a look at a few of the poems he wrote in Where the Sidewalk Ends today. Now, before we start reading some of the poems in Shel Silverstein's Where the Sidewalk Ends, I wanted to take a minute to talk to you about tone and mood. Now, you might think of tone as the way you speak. Someone might say, "Don't take that tone with me," and you also might think of mood as the way you're feeling. And that's pretty much what it means when we're talking about literature as well. But there's a big difference between tone and mood. The tone reflects the author's attitude of the characters, or the setting, or the story that they are writing, while the mood is what the reader feels. So when you and I are reading Shel Silverstein's poems together, the mood can be completely different. I might think a poem reflects one mood, while you might think it reflects another one. In the same way, I might think some of these poems are really funny, and I do. I think all the poems I picked are pretty funny. You might not think they're funny, and that's okay. We all like to read different things, and we all find different things funny. The tone of the author can affect the mood that we get from the poem. An author might use certain words to make a poem seem more serious, and the way they structure that poem as well might contribute to that tone. That being said, just because an author's tone might be serious doesn't mean that it's going to be serious. Sometimes when a tone is serious, I just think that the content of the poem is even more funny, because the content might not be all that serious, but the tone in which the author is writing might seem serious. So let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of the poems from Shel Silverstein's poetry collection, Where the Sidewalk Ends. Now, as we're reading these poems, I want you to think about what you think Shel Silverstein's tone in the poem was and what mood you got from the poem. Also, you can tell me in the comments below if you thought this poem was actually funny or if you think, "Gee, Miss Emily, I don't think you have a very good sense of humor." I want to start with a poem that is called Captain Hook. Captain Hook must remember not to scratch his toes. Captain Hook must watch out and never pick his nose. Captain Hook must be gentle when he shakes your hand. Captain Hook must be careful opening sardine cans, and playing tag, and pouring tea, and turning pages of his book. Lots of folks, I'm glad I ain't, but mostly Captain Hook. And you can see here that Shel Silverstein has also included an illustration of Captain Hook. Now, what do you think Shel Silverstein's tone was in this? I thought it came off as kind of serious. As the author, he was saying, well, these are all the things that Captain Hook has to be careful about, And I'm really glad I'm not Captain Hook, because it means I don't have to be careful about him. But the mood that I got from the poem was that it was funny. Why does Captain Hook have to be so careful, do you think? Why does Captain Hook have to be careful when he's scratching his nose or when he's shaking someone's hand? Would you want to shake Captain Hook's hand? It might hurt a little bit, don't you think? So I think this poem is really funny because I think even though Shel Silverstein kind of addresses it like it's a serious problem, and you know, if I had a hook for a hand, it might be a serious problem for me too, but I think it's funny because even though he's saying it like it's serious, it kind of seems ridiculous. Who gets their hand replaced with a hook in real life? If your parents give you permission, go ahead and tell me your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. So let's take a look at another one of Shel Silverstein's poems. And this one is one of my favorites. It's called True Story. And you can see here Shel Silverstein has included another one of his illustrations to go along with the poem. And I think that the illustrations really add something to the poem. So keep this image in mind as we go ahead and read through the poem, and then we can discuss whether or not we think this drawing contributes to the tone of the poem or the mood we get from it. True Story by Shel Silverstein. This morning I jumped on my horse and went out for a ride, and some wild outlaws chased me and they shot me in the side. So I crawled into a wildcat's cave to find some place to hide. But some pirates found me sleeping there, and soon they had me tied to a pole and built a fire under me. I almost cried, till a mermaid came and cut me loose and begged to be my bride. So I said I'd come back Wednesday, but I must admit I lied. Then I ran into a jungle swamp, but I forgot my guide. And I stepped into some quicksand, and no matter how I tried, I couldn't get out until I met a water snake named Clyde, who pulled me to some cannibals who planned to have me fried, but an eagle came and swooped me up, and through the air we flied. But he dropped me in a boiling lake 1,000 miles wide, and you'll never guess what I did then. I died. True Story by Shel Silverstein. So again, I obviously thought this poem was really funny. But what do you think? I can go ahead and tell you why I think it's funny. First, looking at the poem without the image, I have to say I think that this poem is really funny because of its title, True Story. We just read that poem. Do you think any of that sounded particularly true? Do you think it's very realistic for him to have done all this stuff and then died and then come back to tell us all about it? Not really. I think it kind of sounds like a tall tale. So I think that it's really funny that this is called True Story when it's so unrealistic. But another thing I find really funny is that Shel Silverstein uses that same tone that is kind of serious. Like, I swear this happened. It's totally serious. I'm not lying to you. Even though we know, as the poem goes on, everything that's happening to him gets crazier and crazier. I mean, he meets a mermaid. And then at the end, he dies. And he tells us all of this in a really serious tone, which I think is so funny because I, as the reader, know that almost definitely didn't happen. Again, if you have your parents' permission, go ahead and tell me in the comments below what you think of this poem. Did you think it was funny? I hope you did. The last poem I want to talk about is Recipe for a Hippopotamus Sandwich. And for this one, I'm going to wait to show you Shel Silverstein's drawing until after I read the poem because I think the drawing is really, really funny on its own, but I want to see if you think that the poem is funny before you see the drawing. So let's read Recipe for a Hippopotamus Sandwich. A hippo sandwich is easy to make. All you do is simply take 1 slice of bread, 1 slice of cake, some mayonnaise, and 1 onion ring, 1 hippopotamus, 1 piece of string, a dash of pepper, that ought to do it. And now comes the problem, biting into it. So, did you guys get it? Did you think it was funny? Well, if you didn't get it, let me go ahead and show you the drawing that Shel Silverstein made, and let's see if it makes a little more sense. I think that's hilarious. It's a hippopotamus with bread tied to it. How could you bite into that? A hippopotamus is huge. It's way bigger than me, and it's way bigger than you. I think the drawing adds a lot to this poem, because the first time I read this poem, I kind of forgot the title of the poem, and as I was reading it, I just thought, yeah, this sounds like a recipe. So again, I thought the tone of Shel Silverstein was pretty serious. It was just like any recipe I'd read from Google or Mrs. Alexis's What's Cooking program. But then I looked at the photo and I remembered, oh, a hippopotamus isn't a regular ingredient. There's no way I could bite into a whole hippopotamus. That's crazy. And why would I want to? So the mood I felt all these poems gave off was that they were really funny. I really enjoy reading them and reading through all the other poems in this poetry collection by Shel Silverstein. I think that they're so funny. I always want to read them aloud to all of my friends. And I would love to hear what you guys think about these poems. Did you feel the same? Do you think that Shel Silverstein was kind of serious in his tone? Or maybe you think his tone was completely different. Maybe you don't think the poems were funny at all, and that's okay. So thank you guys for joining me in our first ever Creative Writing Corner. Before we go, I do want to bring out the Creative Writing Jar. At the end of every Creative Writing Corner, I'm going to have this jar that has writing prompts in it. Now, I want to be clear. This is not homework. You do not have to do these writing prompts. I just think they're fun. And if one of the prompts seems really fun to you, I encourage you to try and write something following the prompt. I'm also going to try and write something that follows the prompt every month, and then we can come back and I will share what I wrote with you, and hopefully if you feel comfortable, you can go ahead and send in what you wrote, and I can go ahead and give it a read. I'd also like to suggest that so we'll go ahead and pick a writing prompt, but I also want to say, so let's go ahead and pick a writing prompt from our jar. I'm not looking, so we can truly be random. Ooh, so this one is, on a bright and sunny summer day, the snow began to fall. So you could start a story or a poem or any other sort of writing project, and you could start it with this line. Or you could incorporate that line into any part of a short story or a poem. Maybe you want to write a funny poem like Shel Silverstein. So I'm going to go ahead and try to write something that goes along with this prompt. If you guys do, and if you feel comfortable sharing, you can go ahead and send what you wrote in to me, and we can even go ahead and share that on our LibGuide website. And if you don't want it shared on our LibGuide website, but you still want to share it with me, just let me know in an email, and I'll totally read it, and we'll totally keep it off the website. Now, that is the end of Creative Writing Corner. But before you go, I did want to let you know, for a short time, we're actually going to have creative writing journals that you can grab to write your prompts in, or really write anything in. If you go ahead and call the Asheboro Public Library Children's Room, we can go ahead and set up a curbside pickup date for you where you can go ahead and grab your notebook. I have a few extra stickers on mine, but what you'll get is this nice journal that you can write in, and we'll include this sticker right here so you can show your creative writing pride. And we won't put it on there, so you can go ahead and put it wherever you want. And since this is kind of like a paper cover, you can really get creative and draw on it or put a bunch of stickers all over it, which is what I'm trying to do. You can really do whatever you want with this. So go ahead and give us a call at the Asheboro Public Library Children's Room. I'll have the phone number right down here. And we'll go ahead and set up a curbside pickup date for you with that. Thank you guys so much for coming to my Creative Writing Corner. I hope you guys had as much fun as I did, and I hope you guys even got a few laughs out of it too. Join me next month in October when we'll be talking about the spooky, scary short stories and poems of Edgar Allan Poe. Thank you guys, have a great rest of your week, and keep on writing. Bye guys!